Hello,
Hello.
everybody. Welcome.
Hello. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, good evening. See, this is the great thing. This is what I was saying is when Keshet is joining us from Australia in did we just say that? New South Wales? Right.
Yeah.
And people are like, New South Wales, what's that? It's new and it's South and it's Wales. And it's very close to Byron Bay, which was where Tess was from. So this last segment is all Australia because they're waking up in the future and we are back in the past. Oh my gosh, isn't that what's really going on in America? They are living back in the past.
Yes. We've been calling it multi-time dimensional because we just worked with a crew of people putting together a book, and we could work 24/7 around the clock because some of us were in the UK and some of us were in the States and some of us were in Australia, and so 24 hours went for a really long time. Like it was actually 24 hours.
Yeah, well, that is multidimensional, and that's one of the advantages of us recognizing how connected we are in the web, right?
Yeah.
That there are certainly advantages to this virtual experience, and whether or not this really, like, I find it's very real. you know, this whole idea of what is real and what is not real is also being challenged right now. So you help people heal, self-healing. Tell us about your journey and how it came to be, and how you're that instrument in bringing health back into people's lives.
So for many years now, I've worked in a practical sense, so in the community through community arts and with youth work and community, and so that practical side within the mainstream system, bringing people back into themselves fully and helping them sort through the stuff that's holding them back from being all they can be.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess we've done it in many ways in a very, all the birds in the background, in a very different way. And so in the beginning I started out and I worked in the music industry, and I had a whole lot of young people that were disconnected from society and community, and then we'd run events for them and we'd teach them how to run events so they'd have that ownership of things and feel that sense of pride and passion and empowerment. And then through that, I started formally training in youth work, and then I've worked for the last 10, 15 years in that field and incorporating, different pillars. And so I had these realizations that the environment, so many people feel disconnected from the environment and disconnected from the earth and disconnected from community and disconnected from themselves. And, the arts is a great way to heal that communication, telling your stories, and then moving past those stories and through those stories. And so we can just come fully back into ourselves. And then the other side of it was forever I've been connected with nature, and I've always had, for many years as a young person, I was that seeker, that searcher, looking for the truth, frantically at times, looking for that truth. And, there's these aha moments, but many, I call them stepping stones in the path of my life, where I gradually was able to let go of that frantic search and just let myself be. And so and then I studied, shamanic healing work for many years under this incredible teacher in the States, and have just completed doing teacher training to teach her work here in Australia. And so it's just, this path, it's just been an absolute blessing, and it's just found me at the absolute right times, and it's just sort of fallen into place, this real path that no matter how hard I tried to push things in different directions, my path just kept crossing back over and looping back in and dragging me back in at times, kicking and screaming.
Well, Leah has just added a comment here that the birds are singing their support and praise, and I read that comment and I was like, no, I think they're telling. I mean, yes, they could exactly be doing that, but I think they're telling me that I forgot to play Bob Marley's song and the two birds. So I'm just gonna step over here for a moment. So why did you pick this particular song?
So this song is something that, always when I was young, from a teenager, this song would put a smile on my face. And, three little birds sitting on our doorstep singing sweet songs of melodies pure and good. Like, if we can find the beauty in the little things, like the birds singing, just before we went live,
Right.
or just before we went on, there was a bunch of kookaburras. And kookaburras, I don't know if everyone knows them, but kookaburras just laugh. And they laugh and they laugh and they laugh. And whenever I hear kookaburras, it's like a sign for me, just get over yourself. Just, like, don't worry about anything. Just do what you're doing, say what you're doing, and just get over yourself and get on with your life. And, so
Well,
the
isn't
little
there
things
a
in life.
kookaburra sits in the old oak tree? Isn't there some song like that? Mary, Mary,
Yeah.
love, kookaburra, love. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I know that song. Okay, but now we're going to. Okay, we're going to Bob Marley now, and the Three Little Birds. Like.
Singing, don't worry about a thing. Everything's gonna be alright. Rise up this morning.
I'm gonna have to. They set me down the other day, so I'm gonna just stop there. Like the last one, I was like, "Hey, you played more than you were supposed to." And it's like, Leah. I'm like, Leah, I was doing fine until you told me that Facebook might shut me down. Okay, no. But there you go.
It's all about the little things, the seeing the three little birds and letting them wake you up in a beautiful way, and smiling at the rising sun, and just celebrating those little things in life, and allowing yourself to see those little things in life. So many people walk past the little flower on the ground, or the little bug that's like iridescent blue or whatever, and they don't even notice it because they're so in their head or out of their body or separate from themselves. And the more we can bring ourselves back into ourselves and into our heart and out of our head, then the more that we can see how much beauty there is in the world. And also
I was just going to say, I was one of those people for the first 28 years of my life. I was like, sunset, who cares? Okay. Like, where's the money? You show me the corporate jungle. Okay. Like that's literally, I had nothing that had any interest in nature. And now I'm like, oh, did you see that? Did you, so it is a shift in perspective.
Definitely. And a slowing down and a getting out of your own way, and allowing yourself to see, there's so many incredibly beautiful people doing incredibly beautiful things that aren't there in flashing lights going, look at me, look at me. They just do their beautiful things, and they help people heal, or they teach, or they, whatever they do, sort of thing. The nurses, the doctors, the teachers, the person who is just loving and caring and doing their thing in the world, like, that's important. We don't need to be doing spectacular things. And that, there's the frantic search for meaning, and then the frantic search for a path as well. And what are we meant to be doing with our lives, and how do we do this? Like, if we just let ourselves be, we often see that it was there in the background, the inklings of what we're to do with our lives. It's just stopping and listening and allowing that through.
Yeah, that's so true, right? It's just this illusion that we have to get somewhere, right? This, as you say, frantic and flashy lights. right? Like I feel like that was one of the awakenings, if you want to say, when people started to say, oh, we have essential workers, right? And it's like, we're all essential because we're human beings, right? We all have a role. And, you know, the person that is playing the role of the homeless person is just as important as, you know, the Queen of England, because they each have a role to play. They each are the note that needs to happen in this great production, because we're all in this together.
Yeah, that's it. And and you know, I remember seeing this thing years ago, Zongman, and he was a fisherman in Japan, and he had this connection with the river and the birds and the this and the that. And you know, it's like that story about the businessman and the fisherman, where the businessman comes along and he goes, you know, you could do this and you could have all these boats, and then you could, you know, make all this money, and then you could buy a fishing fleet, and then down the track you could retire and move to a village and lie by the beach and have siestas and hang with your children. And the fisherman's like, what am I doing now? You know, that's exactly what I'm doing. And that's it, that search for the whatever it is just, you know, we can find it at any given moment, and it's not easy, you know, it can take, there's a lot of stories and a lot of pasts and a lot of trauma and just the way of the world. But you know, if we give ourselves space and if we commit to that healing and commit to that purpose as much as we commit to making money or chasing the dollar or chasing the career or the frantically searching, if we just gently plot away towards our own healing, you know, because it takes a lot. It's quite brave to stop and look yourself in the eye and actually listen to what you need to change in your life.
Yeah. And most people really wait or have, you know, generally there's an issue of some sort of breakdown, right? They lose a relationship, a career, there's a natural disaster, something happens before they go, oh, you know, maybe I got to do something different. Right? Maybe I just almost died, you know, because I had some issue, you know, like maybe I need to do it. And it would be great if, I kind of feel that this people have sort of opened up over this experience. Yes, we still had people that died, but we've always had people that die. But if in this early part of the 2020, if this opened them up to another level of awareness and came to their heart, you know, then it's going to be easier for them when everything falls apart.
I think, yeah. I mean, look, I've sort of, this whole, you know, we really saw it was like this house of cards that we've built sort of thing, like all these things, like it's been a real, it has, like everything that we put faith in as the modern world and the modern society, you know, our medical system, our economic system, our society, all these things, you know, they collapsed, a lot of them in a lot of countries within days of all this coronavirus happening. And so everything that we held dear and everything that society built itself on and believed in was pulled out, you know, like the proverbial rug.
Right.
And it was just, but I saw this as like, it was like the start of the fool's journey, you know, the archetypal journey of the fool and becoming, you know, we were actually left there and with our little knapsack of stuff because we couldn't drag all our bullshit stories and big trunks down this path that we were getting thrust down. So we were, you know, we were left almost naked. And this whole thing about standing naked in our power came to me, about how, you know, all our crutches and all our time and people were literally left with time to think, you know, so many people were left to sit in their houses and just think and just look at themselves and just recognize. And I thought it was really cool actually with the butterflies and the becoming the caterpillar, like moving from the caterpillar into the butterfly in Australia, in northern New South Wales during that time, because there'd been, you know, the actual reasons theoretically were like because there'd been drought and there'd been fires and then the rains came. There was this influx of butterflies, but the symbolism of butterflies. And so as the world was collapsing around us and the streets were quiet and everyone had to stay inside, there were these plumes of butterflies everywhere, these blue butterflies, and it was just this, and in the lead up to it too, and there's just this symbolism, like if we had have realized retrospectively, it's like, yeah, change was coming, you know, we didn't know how it was going to come, but, you know, and so just, I remember in times when I was really down, you know, and then I just see this plume of butterflies and it was like, wow. And so, you know, I do feel it was part of the bigger picture and stuff, but you know, it was quite a, yeah, so we all set off on the fool's journey and into the unknown, and we, you know, everyone, a lot of people who never look at themselves have been forced to look at their lives and look at their stories and see where they want to go from here.
Yeah, and I mean, it is, you know, picking up a book when it's about yourself. It's like, oh, you know, or really, oh, it can be challenging to read, challenging to look at how your perceptions are affecting your present when you want it to be something completely different.
Yeah.
The gem, though, is when you actually take that time, as everybody's been sharing today, when you take that time to shine the light and look at it and unravel it or shift it or reframe it, whatever you want to perspective, is it gives birth to something completely different. And it's like, you know, just like with the butterfly, the caterpillar goes away, but it doesn't die. It transforms to the butterfly. And our stories transform. Like the ultimate issue of the trauma is there, but the emotion has been released, the perception has been shifted. And I'm sure must be so rewarding. Is that the right word for you, as when you're working with someone and you've gone on a shamanic journey and you've come back and they're like,
yeah, it's a blessing. It's such a blessing and an honor to be a part of people's journeys and to see, you know, I have this whole thing, and I do workshops, but this whole concept around relighting the fire within. And so many people are, as I said, you know, it's almost like they're trying to get the hell out of Dodge, you know, life's tough here and there's, you know, they're out of themselves sort of thing. And so helping people, you know, come back into themselves and build that strength and that power from within. There's also, you know, because I work in the both worlds, and so you're working sometimes more in the mainstream world, and so you have to word the concepts differently to how I guess with shamanic, you know, you can just cut to the chase and say how it is, and you can just deal with stuff and move it out and shift it in and pull the energy around, and it's just so much quicker sort of thing. Whereas with mainstream work, you're like, you've got to cross your I's and dot your T's and watch your this and that sort of thing, and think about how you say it. But I guess, you know, so with a lot of people, they've got so much armoring and so much protection around themselves and stuff. And so supporting people to build that strength from within so that they can take off those layers and shed those layers and move, you know, step out of the chrysalis sort of thing that's been holding them safe for so long. You know, and it's step by step and layer by layer as you peel back those stories and heal part of those different things, you know, you can step out of that. But this whole concept of, you know, relighting the fire within, so many people, so, you know, we've got this inner spark and this inner thing, but so many people, when they come to me, this fire is like, it's out, it's this tiny little ember sort of thing that they're holding so close to protect sort of thing. And some, you know, some have forgotten, you know, some young people that I work with or women, you know, there's been so much trauma and so much story and so much full on stuff that, you know, they don't even have a dream, you know, like you ask, I've got young people that I've asked, you know, well, what did you want to, you know, what do you want to do? And then go back to, well, what did you want to do when you were a kid? And they'll look at me with this look, and they never even had a chance to dream, never even had a chance to dream, because they were so busy trying to find safety and find security. And so, you know, it's that little by little rebuilding that spark and kindling that fire until it's burning again, and you know, suddenly you see that moment when suddenly people can see a future and can see that there might be a chance for them, sort of thing, and that maybe they could have a dream, and
Right.
then working towards that dream. And it's just like, you know, it's such an honor. And then the other thing I see is, you know, the other side of it, it's that wild, you know, that wildfire, the fire has become a wildfire, and it's burning out of control, and there's so much anger and rage and protective, you know, and so that's, you know, bringing the fire back under control, sort of thing, in a sense. And so there's two aspects of it, but either way, you know, you can often see there's this point, and it's this point where, you know, people might be saying they want to do this or they want to do that or they want to do, but there's a point where they fully believe it, and everything comes into alignment, and then it just starts to happen, and you see it, and it's just the most amazing moment. Like, there was an example with myself where I wanted to move, but I was still connected to the community, and my child and her daughter, my partner and her daughter, had moved up the coast, sort of thing, and I was still really connected to this other community, and I was thinking that I wanted to move, and I was thinking that I was ready, and was applying for jobs, and I was getting interviews, and I just wasn't getting the job.
Right.
And then one day I stayed up here where we are now, and I woke up and I got my daughter ready for school, and I went and I sat down by the river, and I went, right, I'm ready, I want to be here now. Within 5 minutes I got a phone call, I got offered a job. The person offering me the job's surname was Shaman. And I was just like, you know, that's just that sort of thing that you see when it all just comes into, yeah.
But you know, you can embrace that, right? And realize that that can happen consistently in your life, right? Whereas until someone has that experience, you know, they might think, oh, isn't that coincidence? I thought of you, you know, but that's like, you know, that's like kindergarten, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's when you realize, and I think some of the people are wanting to talk about it as bending reality, right? They're trying to talk now about courses, but you know, the idea is that your experience is and my experience, they can be completely different, and it is like malleable. It is like, you know what? It's like, no, I do want to feel good, right? I do want to be here, and it's like, okay, well, here's your phone call. Like, here's your reality. Okay, it's all taken care of.
And I think, you know, when you're questioning and seeing all the different things, or you can't see it or whatever, then, but when it lines up, and so I think, but you're right, you know, when it's all, you know, when you're living in yourself and you're in yourself and you're moving along with it and you're connected and stuff, then, you know, you're connected with the earth, you're connected with the universe, with the all that is, and you're walking, you know, and it happens all the time, you know, every moment you think of someone, they ring, you do something, it comes, you need something, you find it on your doorstep. Like, it's just this, you know, it's because you're in direct conversation with the all that is, with the web, that it is all connected, sort of thing. But, you know, as we say, so many people are so far removed from that. They're removed from themselves. They're trying to escape a world that's caused them so much pain. So the last thing they want to do is be connected in it. They've got no trust in the universe. They've got no trust in, you know, that there is a divine safety net, sort of thing, that holds them, that protects them. Their heart is so closed. They can't communicate, you know, like all this disconnection, sort of thing. And so that's what the whole relighting the fire is, and the coming back into self is, you know, starting to be able to trust that you're safe here is probably the biggest part, sort of thing, because and and trusting that you're safe doesn't necessarily mean that nothing bad will ever happen. It just means that you have the resources to deal with it, that you are supported, that perhaps, you know, you are going to learn from it. I think what you were saying before about the stories, you know, you change from, this is something that happened to me, this is something that was out to get me, this was something to, when you heal those stories that and you transform into the butterfly, those stories are still a part of your life, but they were part of your growth and part of your learning, and they gave you strength and they gave you understanding of how to deal with things. You know, I'd be terrible at what I do if I hadn't experienced half of the horrendous things that I'd experienced, because it gives me an understanding of what it is to go through those things and how it feels to have your heart broken or to have trauma or to lose something that you love. And so while I don't understand how it is for the particular person that I'm working with, I understand that feeling of loss or that feeling of disconnection or that feeling of whatever it is, and can speak into that. And you can see that, you know, you don't even have to tell your exact story. The things that you can say when you're working with someone can give them the knowledge that you understand where you're coming from, because you wouldn't be able to say that if you didn't know where they were coming from, sort of thing, and if you hadn't had some experience of that.
Yeah, and if everybody realized that maybe their experiences were in order for them to be able to help other people, right, it would make it a lot easier. And I know people go, well, that's just that's just like a spiritual idea, and you maybe aren't giving the experience enough of you know, well, I guess the word that's coming to me right now is the idea that spiritual bypassing is happening, right? That people are like, oh, yeah. and I think there's different modes of like the bypassing it when you know that you're avoiding it. And I do think I did that, you know, years back. I was the spiritual optimist and I wasn't really looking at the issue, right? But then there's the point where you transcend that and you realize you're having the experience. There is emotion to release. There is anger. There is sadness, however it is, but that's part of the experience. But ultimately, your presence is still your presence.
Yeah, I think there's spiritual bypassing, and I think there's this other side of it as well, where it's like constantly poking at the loose tooth or squeezing the wound or whatever as well, sort of thing. Sometimes people are so stuck in this shadow work and the healing and stuff. You know, I think it's important, but I think there needs to be a degree of space as well, sort of thing, and allowing time to process and heal things and stuff. And it just, you know, but I mean, I think in a way, and for want of a better word, but it's another form of ego as well, sort of thing, is that constant, I mean, look, one thing that kills me is this whole transcending the mundane and the spiritual bypassing and the high vibe thing and all that of just transcending the mundane. I mean, the mundane, you're talking about the earth, you're talking about living, you're talking about being here. Like, that is in no way mundane. It can be gritty and dirty and heavy and hard and horrible, but it's not mundane. And you know, like, I have this imaginary tattoo here. I've got two imaginary tattoos. One just says, one just says shh, yeah, across here. And so I look at my arm and it's like, shh, calm, it's okay. But the other one says contemptus mundi memento mori. And ultimately that means literal contempt for the world, remember you'll die. And so, but to me it means, like, you know, when you're having those hard days, when, you know, when you're angry at the world or you're upset with the world, remember that you're not here forever, that you're here, you know, to experience this and to be here and to live this. And so, you know, I think when we live with our awareness of our mortality in this lifetime, you know, whatever your beliefs around other lifetimes and stuff, when you're connected with your mortality in this lifetime, then you can live life more fully, because you lose that fear of death, and you lose that, you know, that wishing away the days and wishing away, you know, things to come and stuff, and you can just live and live fully. And I think that combination, that spiritual bypassing, where you only hang around high vibe people, and you only, you know, you're trying to transcend the mundane, and you're constantly living in the higher realms or whatever sort of thing. Like, maybe you've lived life in those other realms, but this one's about here now. And so
yeah, no, I think, sorry, I was just going to say, because I talk about, you know, living in joy and health and peace and love and wealth, and like that everybody can have their best whole new world, right? And some people go, well, it's not all about being joy and health. I'm like, no, that's a presence from my perspective. That's a presence of what exists. And in that presence, I'm still going to fall down, right? I'm still going to like stick my foot in the mud. You know, I'm still going to have crises in the sense of, wow, that didn't work exactly how I thought it was, right? There are those, but the sense of the joy, the peace is in like a child playing. It's like, whoa, sometimes there is this sadness and that, you know, just pours right through my body. But it's an ultimate presence that still stays consistent in how I'm experiencing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely, 100%. It's all not going to be peace, love, and mung beans sort of thing, but allowing yourself to experience that grief and move through it as a part of your life sort of thing. And to, you know, that, I mean, there was a lot of years where I was a very angry young person sort of thing, and I was angry with why people weren't good to each other, and angry with why we couldn't just, you know, one of my earliest memories was, why can't people just be good to each other? Yeah. And then at about 16, I was sitting in a science class or an agriculture class, and they taught us about allelopathy, where plants poison each other out and shade each other out. And I was like, oh my God, what hope have humans got if plants are trying to kill each other? We're in big shit. And then, you know, and then I tried. And so I remember one day, and I had this vision, I guess, of sitting on the side of a Zen-style mountain with this monk. Uh-huh. And it was one of those aha moments, those life-changing moments where we were doing a tea ceremony, and we were making tea, and I was seeing people walking up this mountain, and we'd offer them a cup of tea and they didn't want the tea. And I'm like, just drink the freaking tea. It's good, you know, peace, love, and monkeys, just drink the tea. And he's just like, you know, you can offer it. But you know, it's like let go of the attachment. You can offer it, but people can't take it until they're ready, sort of thing. All you can do is just do what you're doing and do what you can. And, you know, another moment was this book, this awesome book, Gardens in the Sand, it's called. It's beautiful. It's this young boy sets out on this journey to find his father, and he gets to the edge of the city, and he gets beaten up, and he gets found by this woman who takes him in and looks after him. And she's like a faith healer, and she says, stay with me and I'll work with me and I'll help you get your stuff. So when you're ready to keep going on your journey. And he goes out with her, and there's all this pain and suffering and sadness, and she's working in the midst of it. They get home, and he says, how do you do this? He goes, how do you work in all this pain and suffering and sadness and not drown in it? And she said, in the beginning, I did. In the beginning, it overwhelmed me and I was heavy. And she goes, but I realized that there was 2 ways to deal with it. And she goes, well, actually, there was 3. One, ignore it, but I couldn't do that. Right. So she said, you know, I can see it, feel it, experience it, and drown in it. Mm-hmm. The kookaburras are laughing at us again.
Yeah, like, that's a ridiculous one. Why would you want to do that?
Exactly. Because or we can see it, feel it, and rise above it, or step back from it to where we can see the bigger picture, where we can actually do something useful from it. Mm-hmm. Because ultimately, each person's pain is their own pain.
Mhm.
And we can feel for them and we can offer support, but the decision for healing comes from within, and the decision needs to be made by that person. And when it comes into, and it all lines up and support is asked for and support is accepted, and then it can come through and it can start to heal. But that can never be forced. And those two realizations over different kinds has allowed me to let go of so much of other people's pain and to just be able to be there to help when invited, I guess. And that's and I guess the whole low vibe thing too, if I didn't hang around low vibe people, then perhaps nothing changes. That whole preaching to the converted, as one of your interviewers said in his, I liked what he said, because sometimes we need to preach to the choir to remind them if they're sitting, and sometimes the spiritual bypassing and the this, that and the other, that's a choir that needs to be reminded that actually
Right.
there's people that need to heal and that we can help them. But, only when they're ready, only when they ask. And but if we want to bring the whole world into a place of healing, then there's going to have to be people that go and grab the kids by the hand and the people by the hand and offer that support and say that it's there. And even if they don't take the cup of tea the first time, knowing that you're there, making cups of tea for when they're ready, it's what we can do.
And I think I feel like that's a stage that probably, like, I know I went through, in that sense of drink the friggin' tea, like you're having an issue, so just drink the tea and I'll feel better because you'll feel better. But it's like that idea of letting that go, right? It's I think, and I've seen that with others too, is when you want to start to be of service or of help, right? It's like you want everybody to get it. It's like the person who stopped smoking. It's like, oh no, you feel so much better. And so then it's that recognition of respecting free will and free choice and trusting the process. And I feel like this is sometimes what goes on, just this whole little situation with the media, is they still want to take one view and say, well, we should all be doing this one thing, right? And it's like, no, that's what we're moving away from. We're moving away from that everybody's an individual and everybody has free choice.
Yeah.
And everyone will have a different perspective. So when the other thing that came to my mind was lighting the fire, which was back there, was, do you feel or do you see a sense in, when the wildfires were happening in Australia last year, beginning of this year, last year, or whatever year, it was beginning of 2020 or the end of right?
The end and the beginning.
In the beginning is I felt like, we were a bunch of us, we're all trying to do global prayers and meditation for the fires, and there was a sense, and all of a sudden the rain came, and then there was too much rain, and I kind of felt like there was this energetic thing that people went, hey, we did something, whether we did something or we didn't do something. It kind of felt for the first time that I felt like people prayed or meditated or whatever and thought that maybe they had an effect on this. And so did you see anything like that? Like the fires were raging down there, which were symbolic of the fires that needed to rage, and people needed to realize that we have the power to shift things. And they will burn for a while, but the rebirth of the forests and the nature, it happened quite quickly from the pictures, whether they were photoshopped.
No, they weren't. It was incredible. So we were surrounded by fires, and some of my favorite places in Australia, these kookaburras again. But some of my favorite parts of Australia, but we actually were driving through Australia at that time. So we took 3 weeks off over January and drove in a big loop around Australia, and many of the places that we were going to go to and through were closed off, and we had to go different ways. But there were places that were still smoldering, you know, it was still smoky, and yet the trees had these tiny new growth like coming all the way up the trunk and off the branches, and it was just, you know, and bits of grass poking up through, and it was just beautiful. And you know, it was horrendous, and people lost their homes and people lost, but you know, there was some beautiful coming together of communities. There was some beautiful and the interesting thing is, in the Australian bush, and it's a metaphor for a lot of things, you know, Australian bush is literally forged by fire. There's plants in our bushland that don't open up unless they're exposed to smoke or exposed to flames. And so that, you know, and then the whole phoenix rising from the ashes and the raising to the ground, you know, like and that new beginning, and it's all very, I feel, you know, 2020 and clarity, and it's you know, that it started with fires, and so we were forged through the fires, it was cleansed through the fires, it was horrendous, but you know, the symbolism behind it, and then to have this you know, this other stuff. So it's been all this like knocking over of everything that we know, and then this new beginning. And you know, today, and I'm sure you know, the solstice and the new moon and the, you know, this period of new beginnings, and really taking check of who we are and how we want to be and how we want to go into the future, sort of thing. And it's it's quite incredible. It was funny, I actually bought a pair of earrings the day before it started raining with an umbrella and a rain cloud, and I put these earrings in, and we were driving from Sydney on the last leg of our journey home, and it started raining. So, you know, little
little signs. I took Prince's Purple Rain song and changed it into Australian rain, Australian rain. All I'm seeing is it's raining in New South Wales. No, just,
yeah, I think,
you know, it was brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. And you know, this relighting of the fire, you know, like I've had some stuff going on recently, and I guess it's, what do we do with it? You know, what do we do with, you know, when we go through the razor's edge, when we, you know, everything around us gets changed and flattened, what do we do? Do we step more into ourselves, or do we the proverbial, you know, running away and running away on our, I guess, for want of a better word, soul path, like stepping off it and hiding and going in a different direction and stuff. So, you know, with all this going on, I actually jumped into this idea that I've had for over 10 years. And so I've started working on this youth project around bringing awareness to youth mental health. I feel like if we can help our young people hear and feel heard and feel supported in it, and bring them towards getting more support and learning how to ask for help early on in the piece, then perhaps, you know, like this will help the parents and the people that care for them, because their young people are well and their young people feel listened to and supported, and then that ripples out into the community. And so I've started this project with art and asking young people to share their stories and their art and their poetry, because I find that art and poetry speaks straight to the heart. It's from the heart, it cuts through the chase, and it just speaks direct to our heart and direct to our soul. And for me, you know, that's been incredible in relighting my own passion, you know, like feeling we could go from feeling like we can do nothing to just doing our bit and doing what we feel like we can do, no matter how small. And so, you know, the power of inviting these young people to share their voices and share their stories, and connecting with each one of them on a part of their journey, and supporting them to be brave and to share, and to, you know, letting your art out into the world is terrifying. and your story and your soul, and that, you know, that
Right.
is what holds so many back, because, you know, and again, it's that stepping naked into our power, feeling strong enough and powerful enough within ourselves to walk through the world as ourselves, without the masks, without the hiding, without that we can just feel safe enough in the world where we can, I guess, you know, we're made up of this thin coating of, we're basically consciousness in a little package,
Right.
and a dog is a little package of consciousness, and a bird is a little package of consciousness, and we're all test pilots in this great adventure of consciousness. And so, but we're, you know, this package of consciousness is wrapped in a thin coating, and that's, you know, our personality and the way that we are. But the more connected we are to the all that is, to the isness, then the more we can just, there's a little package of consciousness just soaring by. So the more that we can be connected and fully come into ourselves, and the more that the thinner, I guess, that package gets, and we can just come through as ourselves, as our pure essence. And that in itself, you know, it's the communication, that you can just talk straight from the connection to the all that is, and you can just say what you need to say without having to second guess everything, and you can do everything, you know, that's just. And so every part that I can play in people coming closer and closer to that connection is just the greatest honor in the world. And so, you know, this project with these young people, hopefully starting them on the path, and bringing people back to listening and remembering. And
that is so beautiful, because listening, remembering, being aware, I mean, I guess the thing that you're doing a lot, you know, you are significant. This idea when that we're only doing a little, if we're following what our heart is telling us to do, we're doing everything we need to do. And that's significant. That's essential. You know, that's what's required. And it's the perceptions of what we've been, the illusions of what the world has been created to say, again, it's hierarchical, that somehow if you're, you know, have 1 million followers or something, you've done something significant. I in my book, one of the things I talk about is being committed and unattached, and they're in the very large spiritual organization. You know, years ago there was a young group that wanted to go to, you know, one area of Germany, and they came back and they said, oh, you know, we only met one person, right? But that one person was a medical student, and that one person that was a medical student had never heard that there was nothing incurable. And he was responsible for starting the medical scientific group that has thousands of doctors all around the world that validate, like, these healings are unexplainable, of how, you know, divine, right? So I always say, right. You never know the effect of what anything ever happens, because it does only take one, and the ripple effect is what is the overall plan, or the source, you know, that is to be taken care of. All we can ever do is be responsible to trust and follow what we're guided to do.
It's so true. You know, a lot of people who work in the community, and it's just, you know, I only help one. There's so many people that you can't help, and there's so many people that it doesn't, you know, but one person, that's one whole life, and
Right.
that life is connected to so many other lives, and that ripple that you may never see is there, and that's it.
And even our life, like, in perspective, you know, there are people that, you know, artists, for instance, you know, their work becomes famous after they die, you know, or someone that has a passion and they die, you know, like Martin Luther King's dream. I mean, he wasn't here to reap the rewards of it, right? You know what I mean? People gone. It's like, when we recognize that's all we're supposed to do is play this role, right? And when we trust that we're doing what we need to do. Like I always say, it's kind of like we got the script, right? So I got the script and went, oh, this sounds like a really good role to play. So I have a little bit of free will, right? I can like ad lib a little bit, you know what I mean? But essentially there's certain points where it's like, show up, you know, it's like, you know, you just need to do it here. And when we can trust that everybody else is doing the same thing, the judgment goes away, because even, you know, the evil stepsister had a role.
The role to play. That's it. I just sort of say, like, even if you learn that you've got something to learn from everyone, and it's even if you learn that you just don't want to be like that person, or you want a different life than that, you know, that is something that you learn from that. And it's just, it's, you know, and this, you know, this project sort of thing, like sharing these, you know, like yesterday, these beautiful young fellows that I know locally sort of thing, and they'd written a song called Colours, and it's about the Black Lives Matter, 3 young Aboriginal men who in the past would have been warriors protecting their tribe sort of thing only a few hundred years ago, and now, you know, the judgment and the discrimination and all the stuff sort of thing. And so, you know, sharing their music, and it just spoke to me. And hopefully, you know, even if one person listens to that and it just says exactly what they needed to hear that day, or, you know, I grabbed a couple of the artworks, like this is an artwork by a young person around bullying, you know, and not having a voice and having to hold everything in and stuff, you know. This, you know, one person might see that and just go, or one teacher might see that and go, we need to make a difference, we need to make the experience for that young person different. And hopefully through this project, that hopefully will become a book down the track that can be used for teaching best practice for youth work, but practical best practice sort of thing about what actually works when dealing with bullying, what actually works with homelessness, how young Aboriginal people are actually feeling growing up, or what it's like growing up rainbow, growing up as trans in the LGBTI AP plus community, you know, actual lived experiences, and then combining that with actual lived experiences from workers about what works, and, you know, what brings young people to seek support, what will turn them away, like real stuff that people can learn from the voices of the young people. Because, you know, we need to listen and we need change. We need to incite change in our own little way within the community sort of thing, and each person that we work with to help heal and help grow and help step into themselves, you know, from the little, you know, because, you know, that, you know, there's young people that I worked with 10 years ago that have become the most beautiful parents, and they came from excuse my language, but terrible families and really rough times, but they became the most beautiful parents. And through them healing and them becoming, you know, and they still have their struggles, but through them stepping fully into themselves and becoming beautiful parents, it gives their children an opportunity to become what they've become, and then their children. And it just, you know, this is the power of healing and the power of being brave enough to, you know, to stop running and to turn around and to face it straight in the eye and to seek support and seek help and to deal with stuff and to heal stuff. And it's the ballsiest move, is to stop running and to turn around and go, right, I'm ready. It's time.
Yeah, art is so powerful. I'm gonna have to wrap up here, but I know there was a series I did with a lady in Chicago. We called it The Healed Heart, you know, because it was she used to use art with a lot of abuse of women, and she would say that sometimes just their beginnings was all dark, right? It was like they just had to get the anger out, you know, in that process. And so, yeah, it's fabulous what you're doing. It really is. And if you could, I mean, now that you discovered where the page is, etc., I mean, there is information in the post, but if you could maybe even tag on the bottom on a comment, just follow Alia's comment. She's been such a great cheerleader for us all, and all are going woohoo and laughing with us and the birds. Then they'll know where to reach out and find you.
That would be beautiful. Thank you so much. It's been very beautiful speaking with you.
It's been lovely. I hope we get to see each other again. Mwah. Okay.
Mwah.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye,
Bye.
birds. Bye, cuckoo birds.